The second part of our assignment is graphing, and I want to take a few minutes and show you the setup for this graph. So I've already put in our variables. In this experiment, I have chosen pressure to be my independent variable. That's the variable that we would control if we were doing the experiment ourselves. Right. In this case, nature controlled it. And my dependent variable is the variable I'm measuring for a change. In this case, it's sustained wind speed. What we want to do is look and see, is there a relationship between central pressure of a system, in this case a hurricane, and the wind speed. And I also want to introduce you to this concept of units. In central pressure, our units are millibars, which is one way to measure atmospheric pressure. For our sustained wind speed, the miles per hour are our units. The next thing I want to show you before we get started, on the graph we have these blue boxes that we will type numbers in. And then for this first graph, I'll type the numbers in for you. Range is the distance between the total numbers. For example, on wind speed at the bottom, we'll start at 0, and our wind speed is going to go to at least 130 miles per hour. That would be the other end of our range. So range is the low and the high of our numbers. And that helps us. If we know what our range is, then we can think the spacing out on the graph. How the numbers are spaced on the graph are called intervals. So that's the distance between the numbers on our graph. So to do this, I could just make some guesses and start randomly filling in numbers, but you know, more often than not, that doesn't work out. And especially if you're writing these by hand, then you end up having to start over a lot, which takes a lot of time and is not so fun. So there's a better way. Wind speed. I know that I want to start at 0, and I know that I don't have a wind speed that goes higher than 130 miles per hour. So if I count by tens, that means I would need about 14 number lines. So I can count, and if we count for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, exactly enough lines. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video for a moment and fill these in, and I'll rejoin you in just a second. And I'm back. And as you can see, I've put all my numbers into my y-axis, which is my dependent variable. Now I need to do the same thing on my x-axis for the central pressure. So here's how we figure this out. I know my lowest pressure for this hurricane was 948. I want to go a little beneath that, so I'm going to go down to 944. I know my highest number was 1008. Again, I want to go a little above that. So I'm going to call it 110. So I take 1010 minus 944, and that gives me 66. I know on the bottom I have around 24 lines. So if I take 66 and I divide it by, let's say 22, that gives me intervals of 3. So I'm going to go and I'm going to enter the pressure in intervals of 3. We'll be right back. And done. All right, so on the x-axis, you can see the pressure in intervals of 3. Now notice On the left side, I didn't start at 0. This isn't a realistic measurement to start at 0 with. I started at 944 millibars, and my pressure counts in intervals of 3 all the way up to 1013 millibars. Now I'm going to show you step by step how to make a line graph with this data. I've put some dots in and our lines, and now we're ready to graph. I want you to graph along with me so you can get used to doing this process yourself. I also want to tell you that if you don't like the colors I've selected, you can highlight them, go up to the color tool, or it says line color, and you can change a color to something you want. I made mine red today because it was easier for me to see. There's a lot of black and blue, and I thought red might help me see things better. Alright, so the first step, on our first date for Laura, 8/21, the wind speed was 35, so I'm going to take my dot, and we're going to go over here to 35. Now, 30's here, 40's at this line, so 35 is going to be in between. I need to find my pressure, and my pressure is 1008. So I need to come all the way out here. So here's 110, my next line's 107. So I'm going to be pretty close to 107, but not exactly. So I'm going to put my dot just a little past 107. And there it is. I'm going to trying to move my dot and I went to a wrong page. We're back. Okay, let's see if it's in a better spot. So what I did is I clicked on my dot and I used the arrow key on my keyboard just to try and move it up a tiny bit. Sometimes it's hard to do that with your mouse. It's still easier if you select it. I'm going to do it again just to show you. I'm using my keyboard to move it up and down. If you don't have it highlighted like apparently I did in the first time, it'll go to a different slide though. Alright, so this may be about as close to 107 as I can get it. Let's try that and see. Oh, I like that better. So I highlighted it and I used my left arrow key to move it over just a tiny bit. Okay, our next point is at 40 miles per hour for our wind speed, and our wind pressure was 106. So here's 40. 40's on the line. The line is 107. So our dot should be on the other side of that line, the left of it. And let's see if we can move it over just a tiny bit more. I like that better. Okay. Our next point is 45. So again, here's 50 at that line, 45's the other blue line, so we need in between here. 45, and we go to 105. And 104 is the line, so we're to the right of our line. Alright, I think that works for us. Our next line, or our next point, is at 65 miles per hour and 1,000. So we don't have 1,000. So 60, 70, we're going to go in between, and I'm going to go ahead and put it there, and I'm going to use my arrow key to move it over to the left to try and represent 1,000. Alright, I think that works. And our next point is at 75. So we have 70, 80, 75 is in between, and we need to go to 991. Alright, so we have 992 here. We need to go a little to the left of the line. I don't think we're quite there, so let's use the arrow key. Let's see how that looks. I'd like it further up than what it is. So I'm going to highlight it again. I'm going to move it up with my arrow key. That looks better. Alright, our next wind speed jumps all the way up on 826 to 115. So let me find 115 here. So here's 110, 120, 115's in between those two. And I need to find 963. Okay, I have 962. So we're going to be just to the right of that line. And we need to go up a little more. Let's see how we look. Don't quite like that. So let's move it up a little further. Alright, so now we're in between, so that'd be 115, and we're a little to the right of 962 to represent 963. Alright, our last, well, not our last point, second to last point is 120 miles per hour, and that happened at 948 millibars. So there's 950. There's 947. 948 is going to be to the right of 947. Now let's see how that looks. Okay. Let's see if we can get it to the left just a tiny bit to be more accurate for 948. Yes, that's better. Okay. And then our last data point on 8/28 was a wind speed of 30. So let's find our wind speed of 30 here. And it had a pressure of 998. So let's go out here. Oh, exactly. 998 and 30. It's a perfect point. Okay. So the last thing we are going to do now is connect our lines. And I'm going to start that by moving one line here and then highlighting the other end and connecting it to my point. And then I'm going to drag over another line. And if these aren't exactly lined up perfectly, don't get upset about it. It's hard digitally to get these all perfect. And I am going to focus on my main lines for the hurricane. This other line, our last data point at a wind speed of 30 and a pressure of 998, that happened when our hurricane had moved over land and was decreasing to a depression. So I'm going to have that data point on there, but I'm not going to include it in my line. And these last couple lines I'm just going to represent with one, because that's really all I can do. Okay. So there's one last piece for you to do. After your graph is done and looks similar to mine, you need to go on and do some data analysis. That's where we write what we think is going on with our graph. Now, when we do these writings, we're a matter of fact. And in our writings, we include the data points, the numbers that help us show what we're saying. All right, if you have any questions, send me a message. Good luck, and I hope it works out well.